This is really worrying news. It's in the same week that a German tourist has been murdered in Mpumalanga. We've heard the news now of 2 people killed on one of Cape Town's most popular beaches. That happened yesterday afternoon. It took place in broad daylight on Camps Bay Beach. It seems it was a hit job targeting one person in particular who died, but the other person was simply caught in the bullets that went flying. I'm joined now by Mayoral Committee Member for Safety and Security, JP Smith. JP Smith, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Could you piece together exactly how this incident unfolded yesterday afternoon?
I think the description that you started with was accurate. We had a situation where 2 men approached the victim, shot what appears to have been 11 shots at him, killed him on the scene, and a second bystander, apparently as far as 300 meters away, was then an accidental victim of the incident and passed, very tragically, a person who's just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And the whole incident is horrific. The city deployed resources quite rapidly in response to it, and we've had consistent resources on that route since, because the conflict appears to be taxi related. Shortly before the incident earlier that day, one of the local taxi operators on that Hout Bay route had gone to the police complaining that there were Qatar taxis intruding or pirating on their route, and it appears that there may be a possibility that the conflict was settled in this manner, which is extremely concerning. So as we do with many of these incidents, as we did in eNCA as well, we will concentrate for a week at least on making sure that there are no pirate taxis, or as best we can prevent the recurrence of any pirate taxis on this route.
Are you able to give us any more information about the identities of the 2 people who died?
I think that's information best released by SAPS, but I can confirm that the taxi operator was the second one was a Qatar member of the Qatar Taxi Association, and that the
JP, I think you've just muted yourself. Sorry, JP, we just lost your line for a second. You were just starting to tell me about the second person. If you could pick up from there, please.
Sorry, ma'am, about that. The young man who was killed appears to have been an unfortunate victim of that hit or assassination on the taxi driver, a young photographer, apparently freelance photographer from Woodstock, and just extremely tragic circumstances. Any death is tragic regardless of the identities of the persons involved, but the prevalence of deaths and criminal incidents, especially high-profile ones, relating to organized crime syndicates, I think has become alarming across South Africa. In Cape Town, these relate to the gang violence, which is commonly associated with some of our communities. It relates to the increased prevalence of extortion, which is creating huge problems, and it relates to the kidnappings that have now become an almost weekly occurrence, with the Peneth kidnapping and the death of an 8-year-old boy in eNCA most recently. These are the reasons that the city has insisted with the National Police Commissioner that we have that we create an effective, integrated, multi-agency task force, and that SAPS open the door for the city to collaborate and cooperate with them on an operational level, not just merely as the attendee of an information exchanging statistics from time to time. It would be fine if SAPS were able to effectively manage these the increasing prevalence and disruptive and criminal impact that organized crime syndicates are having. But if they're not, it's important that the rest of us contribute to start getting effective arrests and convictions on these. And we have skill sets and capacity that we have grown over the last years, which would be able to help the taxi violence, and the syndicates that surround the taxi violence are in very much the same category as organized crime syndicates on street gangs and the extortion and kidnapping syndicates.
We know that the City of Cape Town prides itself on having strong, visible policing in many areas, but very specifically in tourism areas to make sure that tourists feel safe, because tourism income is absolutely crucial, not only to Cape Town, but to our country as a whole. The incident in Mpumalanga also just very, very worrying indeed. And while the tourism minister made the point that we haven't actually lost foreign tourists to murder, and in this case, again, not, it creates that sense that South Africa is deeply unsafe, even if tourists are sticking to the generally safer tourism areas. Talk to me about what Cape Town is going to do to make sure people feel safe visiting the city this season.
I don't think the city has ever been in a position where we have prioritized the lives of tourists or visitors over locals. We made an extensive investment of 1.8 billion rand with the provincial government in driving down crime and murder and contact crime, attempted murder, assault, GBH, and gender-based violence crimes in the 13 worst crime-affected suburbs in our city. That's through our LEAP intervention. And in many of these suburbs, we've seen attractive and recurrent reductions in the most violent crime, including murder, with reductions of 15%, 40%, 24% in some suburbs. And these have recurred in many of these suburbs over and over. So we're seeing the fruits of that investment. Most recently, we have in Cape Town CBD now also deployed 100 officers. We have a substantial crime intelligence around the CBD, as reflected in the last quarter's crime stats, and these relate mostly to the changed sort of urban landscape we're dealing with here. There are many parolees who were released during lockdown, and some of them found their ways into some of the tented camps that are now protected by the Fire Act and various court interdicts. And so the cumulative impact of this is reflected in this crime stats. The mayor requested the deployment of 100 officers on these streets, and they've been doing excellent work with anything from 15 to 25 arrests per day. And I think in the next crime stat release, you will see a significantly improved picture in the Cape Town CBD.
We have reported on that. Sorry, I just want to ask you, I hear you. You've made a good point, and we have actually reported on the good work of LEAP. But just in terms of this coming season, because it's going to rattle everybody, there's concern now that you're not even safe sitting on a beach in a tourism hotspot. What is your message to people who want to come and visit? And obviously all lives are important. I'm talking specifically, though, about the tourism, these areas we traditionally think are safe, possibly are no longer. What is your message?
I mean, the incident on Camps Bay Beach is a very isolated incident. We have not had an incident like that before, and I doubt very much we'll have another one anytime soon. It's an extremely isolated incident. And you must differentiate between casual street crime, which is what the deployment in the CBD of these 100 extra officers who are working in Cape Town CBD, and the surrounding 3 wards, which impact on the predominant tourist visited areas, which I think you will see will significantly change our crime statistic patterns over the next period. And but the problem with the taxi shooting is an entirely different problem. That is a problem of organized crime syndicates, including the taxi syndicates, who have been allowed to go unchecked, not in Cape Town, but in the entire South Africa for far too long. And that's precisely the nature of our intervention with SAPS. When we wrote to the National Commission and said, create a multi-agency task force, which he consented to in writing last week, and for the purpose of which we met with SAP's provincial leadership this week and are working on getting that task force established so that we can deal with organized crime as it relates to public violence and these kind of assassinations and killings. And this is a problem prevalent throughout South Africa. As for tourism safety, I think that there are very few incidents in Cape Town CBD or the surrounding areas, and this kind of incident is quite unrelated to general tourism safety.
All right, thank you so much for speaking to us this evening. It is much appreciated. That, of course, is a Cape Town Mayoral Committee member for Safety and Security, J.P. Smith, speaking about that horrific incident on Camps Bay Beach. One person clearly assassinated, and tragically, a photographer who was actually taking photographs of people on the beach was caught by one of those bullets and died.